Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. What I got today is the Six of Swords as the obstacle and the Page of Pentacles, coins of, the Page of Pentacles for the opportunity. So let's see what we can sort of interpret here, read, doing a reading. In terms of neighboring cards and where the six exists, it's, in a way, it's the establishing of a new ground, a new land, a new ethic of ideas. And I find it interesting that it's depicted here as like a journey by boat, because I kind of feel like this would be more, this is like a, in terms of the, the classical interpretations that I'm a big fan of, this should be a receptive card, and this journey feels active. But I think the action in this card maybe is meant to signify something that just predates what this card represents, and that is the establishing, not quite perfection, but establishing a nice balanced order in the Marseille card. I like, the three swords on either side are, they're balanced, there's symmetry there. So it's establishing this new balance, this new order of ideas, and the ideas, again, most of the time these swords are depicted in the Waite deck. They're blue, and I think that whether this was intentional or not, maybe I'm just putting my own biased spin on it, but I think it's a very accurate observation to make that ideas, reasoning, rationalization, thought, argument, that these things are all essentially founded on morals that themselves rise from emotion, from the emotional response to historical events or charismatic individuals. That reason essentially has a foundation of spirituality or feeling or culture that does not itself lie on a foundation of reason. But looking at this card specifically, and my interpretation of this as an obstacle or something maybe to watch out for, goes a little something like this. We got these people on this boat. They're crossing some sort of body of water. We could see it's a little choppy. It's a little wavy. Doesn't look like a stormy sea, but it's not perfectly still and calm either. The boat is this kind of fleshy orange color, which colormantically, as far as the colormancy is concerned, I think this is representing the human being in the ocean of, again, culture, spirituality, belief, not necessarily reasonable or reasoned. This is it also kind of reminds me of an analogy from, I think, Freud, maybe, when talking about the conscious, the relationship and the ratio between the conscious and the subconscious mind, and describing the conscious mind as the cork of a wine bottle floating in an ocean of the subconscious. Right? Like it's just, the subconscious is so powerful. And Jung, a contemporary of Freud in a way you could say, talked about the collective unconscious. So I kind of see this as a human journey across this sea of the collective unconscious, right? So that sets the stage of what we're dealing with. And now I feel like my attention is drawn to the swords, these rigid, upright swords, these upright beliefs, these rigid beliefs are occupying space in this boat. This ferryman is transporting what looks like an adult and a child across to some new place, and these swords are in the boat along for the ride. I think the interpretation of this as a warning or a potential obstacle lies in considering not necessarily why they're bringing these swords with them, but rather the space that these swords are occupying in this boat, right? And this boat is as a metaphor for our sort of conscious existence again in this sea of the subconscious. They're bringing along all these swords. Not to say these swords don't necessarily have value. Culture, spirituality, morality, these things are important. They're very important to have they create the opportunity for life to have a sense of meaning, which then could be approached with reason to elaborate upon. But as a warning, I like to think of this as asking the question, if they didn't fill this boat with swords, what could they have used the spare room for? Like it looks like the swords are occupying the rest of the boat. I mean, the boat does continue past the edges of the card, so we're not exactly sure what else is there. But I like to think of maybe being able to answer that question with, they could have put other people on the boat. Other people could have come along for the ride. Maybe their extended family. Maybe if the cloaked figure is the mother or the father of the child, and if the ferryman isn't a part of the family, maybe they could have brought the other member of the family. Maybe they could have brought some grandparents or some cousins or some friends. Who knows? So I think that the warning here, I see this as representing, if you fill your journey with too many rigid, upright ideals, tenets of ideologies, conflicting spiritual morals, or just an overabundance of any of them, even if they are, in harmony with each other. Like the swords are all lined up straight; they're parallel to each other. So I feel like that implies some degree of harmony between them. But yeah, but if you overload what you're consciously carrying through life as the little cork bobbing in the ocean of the subconscious, if you overpack ideas, you have less room for other people or whatever else you could think of putting in there. And, this could come in the form of just being a really ideologically opinionated individual that just might have a harder time finding some sort of consensus with others in your life. It could even be people in your family. We're living in a pretty divided time, from what I hear. Husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, children and parents aren't getting along because of their opposing political views. I think this card could be seen as symbolizing that kind of potential danger. And moving on to our opportunity, Page of Pentacles kind of comes after the stage of this goofball just playing with the concept of value, while existing in an environment completely devoid of that kind of value of pentacles. Pentacles, they're generally represented by green, by the color green, and they reflect on value that at its core points to the things that the earth produces. Minerals, food in the form of, fruits, vegetables, things that grow out of the earth. There's certainly abstractions of value that we can make, but at its core, it's the real things, the real sort of physical things that you can interact with. Eventually, also evolving into things like tools that we make from the metals of the earth, houses and structures that we make from mud in the form of bricks or shelter, things like that. But yeah, the page, he's at a point in time when he's in the Waite version here. He's starting to consider the the value, the concept of there being value in these kinds of things. I think it might be interesting to point out that he's standing in the middle of the field. He's standing in the middle of this rich soil, and what maybe even looks like a little bit of farmland, some toiled. What's the word? Some farmland off to the right there. But he's not looking down at that. He's looking up at this coin, and the world around him is permeated with this glowing yellow, which is, the color of swords, the color of thought and abstraction. Maybe not so much yet appreciative of the actuality of the work required, but nonetheless, as an optimistic take, certainly starting to become aware of something. Now, there's something that I really like about the Marseille version. For one, the soil that he's standing on is blue, which, again, kind of more feelings, culture, spirituality, things like that. And there's the one coin in the ground, and he's holding the one coin. And one of the interesting things about this card is that the name Valet de Denier is written sideways. So it seems like the card is meant to be interpreted this way, similar to the way that that I've been interpreting, swords, let's say, which have their number written sideways as well. Now, flipping this card sideways, to me, creates this sort of symmetry where the coin that he's holding and contemplating is on the same level as the coin in the earth. That implies a type of balance or equality or equivacy. What's the word I'm looking for there? And I think that, again, this points out that this individual maybe isn't quite yet aware of the difference between the abstraction of this kind of value. He's not aware of the difference between the idea of it and the actuality, like the actual dirt, the ground he's standing on. It's almost like he's not standing on actual rich, vital soil. He's standing on his spiritual or cultural perception of the soil. Now, this could be either from a naive standpoint of just not having enough experience with it. It could also be from the standpoint of an overly romanticized ecological view of the world, of the planet, of the soil. It's like I certainly wouldn't disagree that the earth is incredibly valuable and efforts must be made to preserve it or interact with it in a way that is that allows for renewability. But some people can certainly take that to this extreme extent where they feel like they shouldn't be interacting with the quote-unquote earth at all. And at that point, they don't see it as this real thing they can interact with. It's just this abstraction. But again, nonetheless, this is the opportunity here. And I think that the opportunity that this card symbolizes is the transition from going from a place where something of value seems like a complete abstract idea to beginning to grasp it, and grasping a singular thing. Like looking at the Two of Pentacles that precedes the page, we have an individual who's juggling these two coins. Does one have any more value than another? Is one worth committing one's attention to any more than the other? It's hard to say. It seems like there's some entertaining value in just juggling these ideas around, playing around with different ideas. I could commit myself to this, financial pursuit, or I could commit myself to this other one. Everything appears equal. With the Page of Pentacles, there's certainly a singular focus So I think the opportunity here is either the possibility to, start reining in your focus on an individual path or direction that involves money, resources, possibly literally working with the earth. Um, or it could, I think, draw attention to the discovery of a new aspect of the world that previously had this kind of was shrouded in this kind of illusory spiritual or cultural, it was cloaked, and now you're starting to see that something that seemed untouchable or abstract in the past is now actually something that you could start feeling like you can get your hands on in a tangible sense, and that you could transform it. There's something about going out into nature, and working the soil and working the resources and transforming all of that chaotic potential into something that has actual use and value. So I think that's kind of what this card, what this card symbolizes. And what follows from this is the implementation of this kind of resourcefulness within a society, within a culture. In the 3, it's represented as being utilized in what looks like in a church or a temple or some sort of religious structure, but nonetheless, I think that largely just represents I think it's a representation of the current culture. Like I think religious norms can be synonymous with cultural norms. There's certainly a lot of cultural norms around that people interact with in a way that is almost indistinguishable from the way that devout religious followers interact with their religious beliefs. So implementation of some sort of transformation of the world around you, some sort of working the soil, so to speak, potentially in the direction of building, reinforcing, or adding to what already exists in the world, what kind of structures already exist, maybe tapping some new fertile soil to that purpose, as it were, metaphorically speaking, of course. That's it for today. Hope maybe you got something interesting out of it, or if you have any other possible interpretations, I'd love to hear about it. Bonk the like button if you had a good time. As always, any comments get entered into a draw for a weekly free reading. So leave a comment if you're interested in that, or if you just want to say hi. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day, and I'll see you tomorrow.